What's up, guys? Today we have a 1971 Yamaha fg-230 and we are doing a string change and a bridge lift because the bridge is too low and it's rubbing on the strings. It's making buzzing noises. Starting off with the string change, you really want to cut these off. And you want to loosen the strings first, because if you don't, they can slide back, and when they break, they'll hit something or scratch the guitar. Or you can, releasing a lot of pressure off the neck all at once is not good for the guitar neck. Ain't she beautiful? Getting all these strings off is pretty easy. You just gotta unwind them. And they come out just like that. And you don't want to leave these on the floor though, because then you're gonna step on them, and that's not a good day. Now that you've got all your strings out of your tuning pegs, you have to come down here to your other pegs, and a lot of tools have ways to get these off. This tool right here has a little fork there, and this tool has this doesn't work as well as the other one did, but I like to use the tools that are meant for this, because some people like to use a knife and you can actually chip off parts of your bridge. Now that we have all those taken out, it's time to take this saddle off, because we're going to raise it up to take care of some of that buzz. I'm going to do this the wrong way because I don't have the right tool. What I did was I grabbed it with a pair of wire cutters. You don't want to squeeze tight on these. You could crack them very easily. They're not something that you want to break, because then you have to buy a new one. To do a lift on the saddle, you want to get a kind of thin cardboard like this, and this is what I'm going to be using because I can't find any other thin cardboard. But you know, this is the type of strings I'm going to be using for this too. You just want to cut a piece down to the size to fit into this hole, and then well, you want to lay it in there, and this will raise it up just a bit. I'm going to put two pieces in here because it was really low. And when you're done, you just put this back on here, and it'll sit, instead of at the bottom of the slot here, it'll sit on top of that little thin piece of cardboard, and it'll be raised up not enough to change anything, but like enough to get rid of that buzzing, because these strings are so low back here, and they're so even that they really just kind of float above it with how short this bridge is for the saddle. When you do finally put this saddle back in, make sure you have the thicker little divots here on the side with the thicker strings, because they're actually routed, or what's the word? They're filed down to fit the strings in there. So each one has their own specific slot, or they should. But this saddle is just so low that the strings were kind of just hovering above them. That's why the holes, you can see the grooves here, are not very deep at all. But they're deep enough to hold the strings where they need to be. At least if it's tall enough. With an old guitar like this, these tuning pegs have fallen out and gotten lost over the years, so not all of them are going to be the same age, and a lot of these are sun degraded. So, and this one's not even the same shape, it's round. All these other ones are kind of ovals. But I like to organize them from like darkest to lightest, or oldest to newest. Yeah. There are a couple reasons I like D'Addario, and then there's a couple reasons I don't. They have these color-coded beads on the end of them, and I think that's really cool. But then they have these crappy plastic bags, and they bind them all up in the same bag, so they're not really shelf-proof. Like, I wouldn't leave these on a shelf for a year and then come back to them and be like, oh yeah, these are perfectly fine. They will corrode over time because they poke holes in these bags because they're not good. Ernie Ball is a little better when it comes to preparing for things to sit on a shelf for long periods of time because they have thick plastic wrappers around a bunch of individually wrapped strings instead of wrapping them all together. But I'll show you how to get. Now that you have your strings off, it's a good idea to just go over and oil it, especially with these older guitars, because they get a lot of buildup, and usually people don't care for them at all. Nobody really ever does this, and you don't have to. It's just a good idea if you don't want your fretboard to turn to dust and then never be playable again. Yeah, but you can tell this one's really dry because no one has ever oiled it. This is Dunlop 65, and this is cheaper than getting 2 smaller bottles, so it's double for a little bit less, which is usually how things work. You really want to like get in there. Scrub on the fret wires, because that's where all the gunk builds up, is right next to the fret wire. That is disgusting. You can see that it's really soaking up all this oil because it was dry. I've never oiled this guitar before, but all my other guitars, no, they're spread around this room, I have oiled, except for that green one over there. This is actually not soaking up as much as I thought it would, but these frets will have to be replaced soon because they are really flat. I'm not gonna do that today because I don't have fret wire, and that one feels like it has a dead spot on this end. That's not too good. Let's get to the string change. Okay, so first you're gonna wanna find the first strings you have. We're gonna start with the brass ones, which are the low E strings. And we're just gonna jam those suckers in the hole. We're gonna start with the deeper, octave, the lower octave strings, and then we're going to put the lighter octave strings on. Okay, so to get these in here, you're just going to shove this little bit down through there, put your pin in. I'm doing this one-handed, so I'm going to pull my piece as far up as I can get it, and then I'm going to shove my pin in and just hold it down. And that's how that's held in. Now you're going to come over to your headstock, and this is the deeper octave, so it goes. Let me straighten out this little pin here. You want to thread it through your little thing. And what I like to do to make sure that there is enough length on my string that I can wrap it up enough times is I like to pull back this string to the about halfway to the 2nd fret, and that gives you enough string so you can coil it up a little bit. Okay, so how you coil up your tuner is you want to turn counterclockwise. Counterclockwise until you make that first loop, and then you want to take your string here that goes to the bridge and go over this little extra string here. And on your second turn, when you finally get back to the part where your string goes into the peg, you're going to go under where it goes in to the peg. Like this, it goes under. And then you want to wind it up until it gets tight enough to hold down so it'll make a tone, but not tight enough so that it's at tune, because we want to get them all in on the guitar, all the strings on the guitar, so that we can tune them at the same time. That right there is good enough for now. With this extra string here, I like to clip it about 1/2 inch away from the tuning peg, right there. That just keeps it from poking anything or getting in the way, and this gets in the way all the time. I'm gonna go ahead and put all the deep strings on here so you can see what that looks like. Okay, now that we have all the strings, all the lower octave strings on, which is really just these 4 right here, because after you get to the B and the E string, their second strings are the same octave. So on all these guitars, on all 12-string guitars, or most of them, unless it's a left-handed, the deeper string will go in the slot on the right, and this is because they're all specifically filed down to fit these strings and their specific sizes. And when you're putting on the deep string, you're going to want to start with the 2nd peg and then skip a peg as you're going around. This is because you're technically skipping a string with each string, so skip a peg so that you can have a peg for that string. It is not tuned. I'm gonna wait until I have all the strings on it to tune it, but this is what it looks like halfway done. Here's what it looks like with all the strings on here. Now to tune it, you're gonna have to pick up a tuner like this. This one's pretty simple. You pluck a string and it tells you what it's tuned to. To tune up, you go counterclockwise, and to tune down, you go clockwise. Now this one's an E string, so we're gonna tune it to E. Alright, now that I have all the strings on and tuned, here's what it sounds like. Anyway, we fixed the saddle and we fixed the broken string. Here's what the headstock looks like with all these strings put in, and here's our bridge with our saddle that is now raised higher and can have the strings sit on it properly.